Hello and good evening. Welcome to our engineering career panel. My name is Isel Silva and I'm the Director of Career Services here at GCC. We are so excited. I keep seeing participants coming in, so we're so excited that you all have invested time on a Thursday evening at 6 p.m. to be joining us and listening to our industry experts. We have a great panel and we're really excited to have them here. Before we dive into introducing our panelists and them sharing a little bit more about themselves, I thought we can maybe do introductions to our career services staff and our program director for the engineering program as well. So Dakota, would you like to go next?
Hi, my name is Dakota Weber. I am the event planner and social media coordinator, as well as some support staff at Career Services at GCC.
Lindsay?
Hi, my name is Lindsay Walker, and I'm the Experiential Learning Coordinator at GCC. So if you are interested in internships, job shadows, career interviews, any of that stuff, service learning, I'm your girl.
Tatum?
Hello, everyone. I'm seeing a lot of my students here. I'm sure that extra 5 points for the first exam had an effect on your decision to be here tonight. Nonetheless, I'm happy to see you here, guys. I hope you guys enjoy it. For those who don't know me, I am Dr. Didam Yaman Congress, and I am the program director for engineering at GCC. I teach ECE 211 statics, 212 dynamics, and 215 mechanics of materials. I also would like to thank our panelists. It means a lot to us because our students need to hear from engineers working in the industry. So thank you very much for your time. Much appreciated.
Awesome. And a few housekeeping rules. Remember that we have panels or we have questions to ask our panelists, but we have this panel for you, our students who are probably eager to learn as much as you can about the industry. So we encourage you to utilize the chat function. It should be at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. If you have any questions during the panel, please feel free to chat us what those questions are. Lindsay from our office, who introduced herself, will be monitoring the chat and we will ask those questions as they come in. For those of you that are receiving extra credit for participating in the event, we do have a quick little survey to see how it went. That will also ask you, if you are attending for extra credit, to give us your name and who your instructor is, so we can send that off to your instructor so that they know that you were participating with us tonight. So with that, we will go ahead and get started. Our first question for our panelists is simply an introduction, and we can go in any order. So whoever's eager to start first, you're more than welcome to. But if you could answer the following question. If you could please introduce yourself, share with us where you work, and provide some information on your background and your current position.
Yep, I think I can go ahead. Hello, everybody. My name is Yasemin Kutesh. I work as a test R&D engineer at the Intel Corporation. So there's two campuses of Intel in Phoenix. I work in the assembly campus. So I have a PhD in materials engineering. I studied in Connecticut, actually, at UConn, University of Connecticut. Before that, I have a bachelor's from my home country, which is Turkey. I grew up in Turkey. And chose to further my studies in the US because I think there's no better place to do that, because there's all sorts of opportunities in terms of using the lab space and having hands-on research in even undergraduate level. So that's kind of what my background is, I guess. And that's it.
Thank you so much. We're happy you're here.
Thanks for having me.
I could go next. Okay, my name is Ricardo Rojo. I'm from El Paso, Texas. That's my hometown. And my undergrad is in aerospace engineering from Texas A&M University. And currently I work at Honeywell Aerospace in Glendale, Arizona, and we support the space industry, defense and space. And let's see, my role, there at Glendale Space is quality engineering, and I've been there since 1998 up through today. I have my review tomorrow, so fingers crossed everything goes well, and next time. And so some of the programs that I work, some I can talk about, some I can't, but the ones I really do enjoy talking about are the human space programs, like the International Space Station and Orion. It's America's next spacecraft, very similar to the Apollo. So, if that's enough, then good. If there's any immediate follow-ups, I'm an open book.
Thank you, Ricardo. We're happy you're here.
All right, I can go next. Hi all, my name is Aslı Yıldırım. Currently, I'm a senior process engineer at Medtronic, which is one of the biggest medical device companies. Before that, I worked as a senior process engineer in different semiconductor companies, and I recently made a change to the medical industry, which I'm super happy about. And before that, I was doing my PhD in physics, so I went to University of Iowa. And from the very beginning, I knew that I was going to be an engineer in industry, so I was focused on, working in the lab, improving my, technical skills and stuff like that. Yeah, that's me in a nutshell. I really love working as a process engineer, and I'm really happy to be in a country that technology is created, not just transferred or tweaked, but built from ground up. So that's why I chose to come to the United States. One of the reasons.
Thank you for joining us, Ashley.
Sure.
I can go next, if that's okay. All right, my name is Samir. I'm from Bosnia, but I've pretty much lived in Phoenix my whole life. Went to ASU, got my bachelor's and my master's in mechanical engineering. Currently working at L3 Harris. We're a pretty big defense contractor. My group, we focus on commercial aviation communication products. So basically all the equipment that enables airplanes to talk to each other, make sure they don't crash into each other or the ground or anything like that. What else did you want us to say outside of that?
Yeah, it was just introducing yourself and your background.
Okay.
One thing that you did miss, though, is that you are a GCC alumni. Isn't that correct?
This is true. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Former Gaucho.
Yes. So we have a Gaucho on our panel that we're really excited about. So we're happy you're here. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Alrighty, so as you can see, we have an amazing panel from a variety of backgrounds, which is really exciting. So of course, we probably have many of our engineering students joining us live. And so many of them, it sounded like a lot of you all shared your educational background. So a lot of you shared your bachelor's, your master's, some of you PhD. So kind of just we'll start with education. What type of education for the work that you do? What is a type of education that's necessary for your career? Is it a specific degree? Are there special certifications that are required? Again, anybody's able to chime in.
I can go. I would say. So I'm a physicist / engineering by education, and I work as an engineer. So, having a physics degree is definitely very, very helpful because that's the core of everything we do. And whether what you're going to do, whether what path you're going to choose, I think you can tweak your education. Like I mentioned, I always focused on working in the lab, especially being like a research assistant in the university, we didn't have a lot of technicians or other engineers to help us with the equipment. So as I go in my PhD, I was always the one, go under the tool and put on a bunny suit, like try to find, use tools and stuff like that. So I would definitely say basic physics or biology degree is required for medical field. And if you know you're going to be an engineer, I hope there are a lot of opportunities for you to get your hands-on training as well. And depending on training, there's a lot of really good software trainings out there. So yeah, I took a lot of them for statistical analysis. I'm not, mathematician by any means, but there's a lot of opportunities like JUMP or some other programs you can learn and use in your job every day, pretty much.
Yeah, I can go next, I think. So at Intel, this is actually my second position. So I'm working as a test engineer, which means electrical testing of all these Intel products. I'm not an electrical engineer, but I am working with tons of electrical engineers. I would say, within Intel, there's, mechanical engineering, first of all, and also electrical engineering are so important. As a materials engineer, I was subjected to a lot of mechanical, classes. And I would say I'm probably better at those because I did learn them at school. And that helped me a lot in my first position, which was actually working as a process engineer in the fab. We call it fab, the factory, right? That's where all the manufacturing of the microprocessors and their assembly happens. So in that sense, I would say maybe not having a PhD, like that may not be required per se for any engineering job in Intel. There's all sorts of degrees, people with all sorts of degrees. But I would say, a basic engineering knowledge, just like I said, in physics and chemistry, all those kind of first year classes, I would say, those are certainly, always used. Do you use every specific information that you get from school? Not really, you probably need to remember them as you go. But yeah, degree wise, I would say a master's degree is probably worth it. Again, for industry type of jobs, PhD may not be needed all the time, but it certainly puts you ahead of the people when there's, specific research that needs to be done on certain projects, because obviously we do a lot of research and development to kind of find what's the next best product. So yeah, those are my opinions in terms of education.
Hi, this is Ricardo. I'll give it a shot. So a couple things come to mind in my specific role as a quality engineer. Quite honestly, I didn't even realize quality engineering was a thing when I was going through school. And I didn't even realize it when I got my master's at ASU in business. No idea. Once I got hired on to Honeywell, that's when I realized that, yeah, it's a thing. It's a pretty significant thing, and I took to it. Probably a little bit of my nature, so I think about our Department of Quality Engineers and Supplier Quality, and I would say a bachelor's is appropriate. A master's would be a little much unless you want to advance to management positions onward. As for myself, I enjoy being a leader at a working level, leading teams for root cause corrective action, things of that nature. So even today, we have a team that's struggling. We're rolling out a new process, and I enjoy being there, working with folks, right next to them to try to figure things out. So also on my mind to address this question is industry. A lot of advice that I give to students, whether it's high school, college, or graduate, is not just think about your degree and where you want to work. Because when I was at Texas A&M, all aerospace engineers wanted to work at NASA, and that's it. And if you didn't work at NASA, then forget it. I'm going to sell jeans at Miller's Outpost. Really, the space industry covers so many different disciplines, so many different engineering concentrations. I mean, you even have marketing and communications working in the space industry. So I would say there's some of that, involved. Pursue your engineering degree because it opens a lot of doors. And also think about the industry that you want to work in as well. Some of the engineering functions that I run into at Glendale Space, Honeywell, let me see if I can think of them. Mechanical engineering, big, electrical engineering, the two biggies. But we also have materials engineering there. We have optical engineering. That's a big thing. We have radiation effects engineering, there. So many specialty engineering roles. So in my particular case, I consider myself a support engineer. We have our design engineers, and then we have our specialty engineers. So I think a lot of folks just in the day-to-day get the great work that we do, but every once in a while we do take a step back and just marvel at what we have accomplished. And I think almost any engineer, almost any professional, has to keep that perspective every once in a while. Yep, I think those are my thoughts.
All right, if you don't mind, I'll chime in. So this is Samir. I'm just going to echo what everyone else has said. I think the barrier to entry for most engineering career fields is a bachelor's degree. I think that's because at the bachelor's level, we all kind of have this fundamental way that we communicate with each other. Like we understand a certain subset of like math and physics and science. And so for that reason, I would say that if you are interested in working in the engineering field, a bachelor's degree would be, in most cases, the bare minimum in terms of a barrier of entry. Now, if you're wanting to get into something more specialized, that's when you can get into like a master's or a PhD. For example, I have friends that have master's degrees and they work in like launch vehicle divisions for Northrop Grumman, and they solely focus on like vibrational analysis of launch vehicles. And the way they got there was by taking specialized courses in their master's and PhD programs that focused on vibration. So I think it just depends like what you're interested in and what you really like find intriguing and what you're curious about. Like if you're curious about something, like you should pursue that because that's something that you can continue learning for the rest of your life. But for the most part, just, focus on getting that bachelor's degree, and that will definitely open up a lot of doors for you guys. So.
Great, thank you guys. I know one of our audience members asked if a master's degree is expected in the engineering field, but I feel like you guys covered that pretty well there. So moving away from education and how that helped you get to your field, how did you acquire your position? Was it networking opportunities? Was it an internship? How did you build up your resume to acquire the position you're in right now?
I'll give it a shot. Serendipity comes to mind. And let me explain. So a little bit more about my background. And hopefully by sharing, someone in the audience will pick up on something and say, huh, I didn't realize maybe I'm on the same track and maybe I'll end up. So for me, when I went to A&M, yes, my degree, aerospace engineering. And at the same time, I was in the cadet corps. I was a cadet. And upon graduation, no engineering, straight to work for my Uncle Sam in the United States Navy. And I did that for about 4 years. And when I left the service and transferred to civilian command, I was a manufacturing foreman at Georgia Pacific. And after that, that's when I started the ASU MBA program. And upon graduation from MBA, it was just as the dot-com bubble was happening. And so I had a lot of offers. People were really pleased with my resume. Engineering, former military, manufacturing, business. And so I had maybe 5+ offers. I get an email from someone from Honeywell. And I think what this person was doing is he would, send out emails as far as open positions. And one of those emails came across my inbox and said pretty much, we have an opening at Honeywell Glendale Space as a logistics analyst. And I turned down every offer. And I went to go interview, and the position was so minor. I was pretty much offered what I was making before I entered the MBA part, but I wanted to be in the space industry. That was by far my biggest interest. And little by little, I continued. Friends that I graduated from the MBA program, some of them continued. Some of them are fantastic directors, vice presidents, owners of their company. Some of them haven't. And then every once in a while, when they ask me, they're like, "Hey, are you still with Honeywell?" I'm like, yeah, 20+ years. They're like, "Wow, 20+ years." So I just stuck with it. And once I got into quality engineering, boy, it was like a fish in water. I really enjoy it myself. It's like umpiring, calling a good game between compliance and schedule, and advocating for customers, which in this case would be the biggies, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, and we roll up to NASA. So I think that's kind of how I entered, and now find myself in this position. So I didn't try for a home run. I just tried for many at bats, and I think now I'm in a comfortable position. I don't know if salary and composition would come up, during this talk, but I'll be more than open. Right now, I make over $90,000 a year, in my role as a senior advanced quality engineer. So not too bad, and praise be to God, really, for those blessings. That's me.
Thank you.
I can go next on this one. So the one thing, I think the most important thing, everybody's journey is going to be different graduating from school, about like how you find a job. So one thing they tell you is you won't find a job if you don't know anybody, but graduating from a PhD, only person I know is my PhD advisor. So how that's going to work out. So I would say, just don't be discouraged. There will be a lot of rejections, especially from a lot of online applications. Nothing is personal, and it's definitely not about you. And that was my experience. So I work as a senior process engineer at Medtronic, and I started 4 months ago, and I have been applying for this company for 1 year. I had other job, but it took me 1 year of like knocking all the doors, manifesting, working really hard. And finally, my friends would make fun of me because I was like, I made a deal with the universe. I'm going to get a job in Medtronic. And, it happened 4 months ago. But my first 2 jobs, I just applied online. I didn't have any connections. They liked my resume. They interviewed me, and that's how I got it. But my current job, my previous manager was working there, so I contacted with him and expressed my willing, and I think he helped me getting a position there. So networking is really, really important, and it also depends on what kind of company you're applying to. So Yasemin can talk to this, but if you are applying to Intel, there will be maybe thousands of applicants. So just I would say try to find a way to put your best foot forward, kind of stay away from classic boring resumes. And then there's a lot of really good source, online about how you can kind of come up in their list. So definitely spend a lot of time in thinking about your resume and see if you know anybody in the company, and don't hesitate to ask. Maybe you don't know someone directly, but that person might know someone, and you would be surprised how much people are willing to help you. So don't take that as like, oh my gosh, I don't know this person. That's like second, third connection. You would be surprised how much people are willing to help you. So that would be my advice, I guess.
Yep,
Thank you.
absolutely. I agree with Asla, and we kind of went through the same uh, tough times in terms of like searching for a job after PhD. Um, I applied online for 6 months probably with no answer. That happens, and you shouldn't be discouraged at all if that happens. And I was, going fresh out of school, you don't know necessarily, oh, like, am I actually, like, is my resume sufficient? Like, are they ever going to hire me? It's all those questions were in our minds too. And trust me, yes, they are looking for you. But, there are certain times of each industry where there's no hiring happening, and that's not your fault. And there are times where like people are looking for people like right away. So you might be surprised, like you would get 10 offers within a week or something, sometimes after 6 months of nothing. So in my case, actually, since I wasn't getting anything, and I was getting kind of towards the end of my PhD, like I had to graduate. I actually was able to get an internship. I think internships are absolutely, like, they are so important, even if somehow like you don't get paid or something. Even if you volunteer sometimes, of course nobody wants to do that, but I think they're very important to get your hands on something. Like, until I did an internship and even started in my job at Intel, like I wasn't sure what I actually knew. Like, you really learn on the job. Um, and that internship actually, if I didn't get hired by Intel, that was in Pfizer, by the way, that's back in Connecticut. So they were going to, I think, hire me too, but I somehow got this offer, and the offer from Intel was through an alumni. So, somebody who graduated from UConn again, I don't know, maybe 15 years ago, got back to, our graduate studies office and told about this position, and I applied right away. And even though, for example, they were looking for polymer materials knowledge, and I didn't necessarily have that. That's a completely separate department, actually. But they were still willing to, talk to me, and I ended up getting hired actually for that position. So it doesn't necessarily matter. Like, in your resume, obviously you put everything you've done, but in engineering positions, I think the most important thing is your ability to problem solve. So anything, any project, any even tiny little thing that you can show on your resume that there was this problem and I solved it through going this way and I reached this conclusion, I think that would be perfect, kind of spelled out in a concise way in your resume. I think, yeah, that would be my biggest advice. So as Asa said, networking is so important. Don't hesitate, just knock every door. Still apply online too, but if you know somebody or somebody that could know somebody else in the place that you want, then for sure go for them and, contact them.
Great, thank you.
Okay, I'll jump in. Yeah, all the other panelists made really great points. As far as me personally, I managed to get an internship my junior year of college, and I stuck through it during the summer, and then I kind of just was working on a project during my internship, and I kind of just asked the manager if they needed any support after the summer, and they were like, "Yeah, sure, you can, like, if you have the time, yeah, you can help out with that." So I just kind of managed to, like, as they said, just I kind of pushed my foot through the door and I kind of just asked for work, and I just stuck around. And I think it's really important, like in an internship, like, you know, emailing and all that stuff is effective, but really just like, getting into people's offices, knocking on cubes, asking people for help, you know, not being afraid to ask questions, and like above all, like being a very personable person to work with. Like the technical skills matter, and like you wouldn't even be in a position as an engineer if you didn't have the technical capabilities. Like it's very apparent who doesn't know what they're talking about. So like the baseline is that we all have this technical competence. But above all that, you know, if you're a personable person, you're inquisitive, and you have the capacity to learn, those are very important traits. I mean, I've personally interviewed interns, and you know, it's very like you can very clearly tell who is personable and who's not. And I will say that is a factor in the decision when we discuss who we want to hire is, you know, like, how do you see yourself working with this person? Um, because it's an important question. You know, if you can't work with someone, your solutions to problems aren't going to be as robust as if you can collaborate well with the person you're working with, like I believe you can have much better solutions than just, you know, working individually on something. So I would say, you know, my career started from an internship from a career fair, and then I just kind of worked my way through that, and now I'm here as an engineer. So
I wanted to throw in some questions from our attendees as well. I'll make sure to get all these questions, but since we're talking about internships, I did want to just see if one or two of you would like to add what are some tips for getting internships? And then the other question is kind of a comparison as far as your education. Let me find the question here. How much knowledge have you found that you gain through schooling and education versus experience through jobs and or internships? So one is the tips, and kind of what was the difference between in classroom and internships?
I can maybe go first. I've never done internship personally, so I don't have direct experience with that. But you know, internship is basically, you know, in a job application in a different, maybe less experienced level. So one thing I would say is make sure you communicate, like make sure you know the company you're applying. And with that, I just don't mean like go to the main page and, you know, look at a few details. Really know the company and use every opportunity to show that. The second of all is make sure you communicate what you want. So when I interviewed with my current manager, I was very blunt to say, by the way, I rejected 2 positions because I really want this position. So he laughed at it. Whether it was professional thing to say or not, I'm not sure, but that's where I was. You know, I really wanted that. So show your interest, you know, very well, I would say. From, you know, as a PhD in physics, I was actually lucky enough to use my direct experience in a job, but that is very unusual because when you do a PhD, you know, focus on one teeny tiny area, and then having that experience in the industry, you are either looking maybe in a very small startup or, like I said, it's going to be very difficult. So I learned a lot from both. But there may not be a direct correlation always.
I suppose I can answer since I've had internship experience. You know, when considering like education versus the industry, they're it's like two totally different animals, but they're kind of related. Like we still have all these certain capabilities as engineers that we use to communicate with each other, but there's these core competencies that you learn in your later years that are really like the focus of your career. So like as a mechanical engineer, like our core competencies are related to like you know, materials, mechanics of materials, thermal engineering, things like that. So you know, those will be more pronounced in your role as an intern, and you'll have more exposure in that role. But as far as like what you are using from your education in the industry, you know, it's hard for me to say, oh yeah, you're going to use calculus 1 in the industry. You know, it's like no one's going to ask you to take a derivative. It's going to be like real world problems. Like, you know, if you're working on a product, is something broken on the product? Like, you know, what's broken? So, I mean, it just really depends. You know, a lot of my experience as an intern was just learning how to work with engineers, learning how the company works, learning the dynamics of you know, everyone in the company, and just learning how to interact with people. And then the education is kind of like secondary because everyone already knows all the you know, all the fundamental aspects of engineering. So, you know, as an intern, it was more like building up my social skills and learning how to interact with engineers and how to use all my resources available to me to solve problems effectively. Those are really important as well. So, you know, as important as technical skills are, the interpersonal skills are pretty important as well.
Thank you. So throwing in a question outside of internships, do any of you work on programming software? And if so, what for?
I do not. I do not program software.
Yeah, I do not either, but I have teammates who, so this is in the testing department, there are test programs being written for each Intel product. And to test those, we actually have kind of like motherboards made per se. They're not motherboards, but like they're PCB boards, which, you know, the products can go on and different testing schemes can be used and all that. So even making that PCB board, you know, the layout and the design of all the electrical circuits and everything. So all that. So I guess it comes down to automating what you're doing. Like, you know, in these times, you know, you need to kind of shorten the time for like everything you need to do. So obviously it's very important, I think, in any field, you know, being able to code and writing something to even maybe automate creating a layout of a motherboard is what my coworkers are using it for now. I'm not really doing that, but that's kind of, you know, half of their day probably goes to that. So just as an example.
We have a question. Oh, go ahead, Ricardo.
Yeah, I mean, very program myself, but as I was reflecting on the person that asked the question, I don't know if I want to try to address some of that as best as possible. At Glendale Space, we actually have software engineers as well, and they develop software for the different programs and projects we support. And there's also a software quality, you know, world as well, software quality engineering. So if someone's interested in that, yeah, just keep pushing away, plugging away. You never know where things take off. When I was in the service, my first job was AD security officer. Nobody knew the security officer was. 25 years later, it's now called cybersecurity. Oh, everyone gets that, you know. So I can see on Facebook and LinkedIn, you know, some of the sailors that I requested to volunteer help me run that. Some of them have gone IT directors. They work in ADP, data processing, and it made up out of IT. So it's really kind of hard to tell, you know, while in school, you have interests, push those interests, explore, and chances are there's something out there. Yeah, I can probably touch on education and experience, hard skills, soft skills, but it looked like you were ready to ask another question about internships.
We've got a lot of great questions, which is great. Thank you to the attendees for participating. I did have a question actually for Yasmin that was just directly for you. What was it, or was it difficult getting a job at Intel with it being a major electrical software company?
Yes, I would say so. You know, the interview process, if you're wondering, was yeah, I remember it was tough. So it was, you know, for a full day. I went there at 8, started at 8:30, and then, you know, every half an hour I talked to someone, you know, kind of like maybe my manager, my manager's managers, even up to the VP level. Um, until I don't know, like 3:30 or something. So, you know, it was very technical. But obviously they knew that, you know, I didn't do that for my PhD or anything. You know, I wasn't specialized in, you know, um, you know, assembly of semiconductors. So they did ask me about, well, so they are very prepared. For example, I have papers that I've written about my own PhD project. So they read those, asked me questions about those, and just in general, kind of like logic questions, or like giving examples from their processes and some of the problems that they were encountering right then when I was interviewing, and they asked me what I would do for those kind of issues. Again, you know, I mentioned earlier, it is very important to showcase your problem solving skills to, you know, those people wherever you're interviewing. So I would say, but you know, once I kind of went through, oh, by the way, of course, you know, there were some phone interviews as well. So I went through 2 phone interviews before I went on site, and they, you know, kind of bring you on site. So I was in Connecticut at the time, and, you know, they flew me here, you know, they, you know, gave me a hotel room, etc. So so I guess, you know, they don't necessarily bring you out to the site if they don't believe in you, you know, through the phone calls. And but you know, you still need to go through that really hard day of interviews to get in. And you know, luckily I was able to convince them, and and I've been there for 5.5 years now. So
Lindsay, I'm gonna jump in quick because we have a
Yeah.
really great question from someone from our engineering club. They asked, are you battling with one of the commonly referred 10 grand global challenges to engineers within the century? So cybersecurity, infrastructure, food security. If so, how? And if nobody's battling those challenges, maybe what are some challenges
Is
you
there a way,
face?
is there a way to rephrase the question?
That was a great
Yeah,
question. I have to really think
Yep.
about it.
I know I'm
No,
not
I'm
in
just
the engineering field, so
battling one of the top 10.
grand global challenges. Are there any global challenges that you guys face in your careers? This might be something they're learning in their classes right now, so.
Yeah, I can give an example regarding cybersecurity. It's not my personal role necessarily, but so as a Medtronic, we make a lot of devices such as insulin pumps or heart monitors and some really, really important devices, basically, that you only want one person and one person to monitor and change the settings. And this was many, many years ago, but they found out that one of the devices was controlled by unauthorized user. So right now, and then you can see the implications of that, you know, it can be even dead. So it's very, very important for Medtronic to have all the cybersecurity measures in place. That's definitely one of their, one of our top list concerns.
Thank you for sharing. That is a really great question. I actually had to Google 10 global challenges. I still want to look at it more. Okay, so kind of taking it back to one question we got earlier on. Say you're doing electrical and computer BSc, what would you recommend to explore the different areas that you can do within that realm of electrical and computer? I can say it again. That was kind of a long question. So say you're doing electrical and computer BSc, what would you recommend to explore the different areas you can do within the realm of electrical and computer engineering?
I actually wanted to ask the same question. I guess the question, I'm not exactly sure what Christopher is asking, but maybe he's trying to understand what is popular right now. So what do you recommend them to study, to learn? What type of field? Cybersecurity, obviously, it's one of those. In addition to that, are there any, I don't know, programs that you think they need to learn or certifications that would help them? Because some of our students are not going for their bachelor degree, they're only going for their associate degree. So maybe they want to get their associate degree and get a certification on something specific. So what would that be, if that makes sense?
I kind of follow. I think what comes to mind is we all do this, right? I mean, we all pull out our cell phones and we look at the news, that's out there. And so for me, as I scroll through it, I like to stop and read some of the technical, articles. SpaceX, for example, and some of what they're doing, very interesting. Very different from at least the industry and the company that I work for. A lot of our predecessors are many generations old because it takes a long time, measured in years, to qualify, and then we deliver, to a prime contractor, and then they have to integrate. So, our technology may not necessarily be on the forefront, but reliable so that it can operate in the rigors of space, hot, cold, radiation. Yes, but I say there could be a lot of technical articles out there that just sound fascinating. There was probably one on Honeywell on a quantum computer. I mean, I'm in Honeywell and I'm reading about this in the news. Oh, we're in quantum computers now. Good. So that's as much as I can offer on the question.
Yeah, I'll piggyback really quick off of what Ricardo said. Like reading what you're interested in, find articles. There's plenty of websites that can, give you information on technical articles, research that's going on. Spend some time reading it. Like, does it sound interesting? Does that subject sound like something you could see yourself doing, 5, 10, 15 years down the road? What's the job outlook for that kind of position? So really like just asking more questions, because, it's hard for me to directly answer that question because it's so multifaceted, but I think the root of it is, what are you interested in? What are you curious about? Okay, you go down that path. Is that path like, can you get paid for doing that work? Unfortunately, we live in a society where, the market demands certain skills, and, if you want to be compensated for those skills, then, you kind of have to go down that path. We can't all just be artists and, sustain ourselves being artists, unfortunately. So I think just spending some time on, what you're curious about, and, finding articles like Ricardo mentioned that, you can research and read about and see if they intrigue you. I think that's probably a good place to start.
Yeah, I would agree with, sorry, just very quickly, I would agree with Samir in terms of like maybe don't go for the popular thing, but certainly try to find what you like. And I would suggest, maybe take some classes from other fields too, to kind of find out what those fields are all about. And, don't be focused maybe on something and kind of like get the bigger picture, because then you can understand what plays with what. And, maybe you can make your choices better that way.
You just segued me perfectly into this next question, Yasin. And this question may have been partially answered, but on a day-to-day basis, this is a two-part question, actually three-part question. On a day-to-day basis, do mechanical engineers work together or individually? Would you find it at all beneficial to be cross-trained in multiple engineering fields? And then if so, what would be best coupled with mechanical engineering?
Great question.
Yeah, I mean, Like, so personally right now, I'm self-teaching myself Python. Like I want to be fluent in Python, and I'm also self-teaching myself vibrational and FEA theory because I want to get to certain sets of mechanical engineering that require those skills. So as was mentioned before, exploring different classes that you're not familiar with, I think if I could redo my education, I would probably spend more time exploring more classes that I wasn't familiar with, just to kind of understand what I like and what I don't like. I was kind of pushed to just complete my degree just because, for, certain like financial reasons, I just, I kind of had to just like push and finish on. But if you can spend some extra time spending, like devoting more time to classes that aren't in your scope of field, then, that could help you a lot too. But, more specialized, topics in mechanical engineering, definitely rely on programming, like a lot of autonomous vehicles. You have to understand programming for that type of field. You know, it just really depends because mechanical is so broad. Um, out, you can land a lot of jobs with a mechanical engineering degree, and then if you want to specialize, typically you'd want to get like an advanced degree. But if you can get, like I have friends that have gotten into companies with a bachelor's degree, and then they've gotten into more specialized roles because they have the capacity to learn. So, it's been mentioned here before that, you learn a lot on the job, which is true, to, definitely to an extent. Like you have to have certain skills to fulfill certain roles. But I would say it just really depends on what you want to learn. Like, what are you curious about? What sounds fun? There's so many topics in mechanical engineering that it's hard for me to cover all of them.
Yep, agreed. And I think I'm a good example. So my degree was in materials engineering, and there, materials is kind of a portion of mechanical engineering. I think it was kind of under mechanical engineering before. So anyways, I have a lot of mechanical engineering knowledge, I would say. But then if you go into materials, then there's biomaterials, different other materials. Like biomaterials are used in medical devices, etc. Or, so I took a biomaterials class, and I was able to kind of work on a project that included some, biomaterials during my PhD too, but that wasn't my PhD topic. So anyways, that kind of brought me to Pfizer, which is a drug company actually. And then, I got hired at Intel as a process engineer, tool owner, which is essentially a mechanical engineer. They assign you a tool, a large tool, and you're kind of you're focused on that one tool as the mechanical engineer. But then now I'm working actually on an electrical field, and that's I owe that to my electronics knowledge from my regular engineering degree, and also some of the classes I took about electrical materials as well, just as an elective class, for example. So I certainly am an advocate of taking many different things, even though they don't look so much fun to you maybe at that time, just to get an idea of kind of the introductory classes from maybe different engineering fields. I think it's very important. And I would say materials couples really well with the mechanical engineering. So I'm a little biased though.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, the time is 6:54. Time really flies when we're having a good time, right? So for that, I'm going to ask the final question to our panelists. And I know that there's still questions coming in. So for our participants, if you would like to take a look at the chat, Dakota left a message in there. So if you are interested in connecting with our panelists to ask a question, if maybe we weren't able to get to it, feel free to email her. Her email, dakota.weber@gccaz.edu, is in the chat. So for our final question for our panelists before we wrap up, what advice would you have for a student that is interested in going into the field? So if you can give our students a quick piece of advice, what would that be?
This is Ricardo. Kind of ad-libbing a little and projecting, my own. I call it the rule of cool. I joke with folks that I'm not a cool person, but some of the things I've done are cool. And so I really like those comments about exploring interests, in your engineering degree. When I studied at A&M in aerospace engineering, they had concentrations. And my particular concentration was dynamics and controls of space vehicles. And never applied it in the Navy, never applied it in Georgia Pacific. And I worked with dynamicists, but I never really applied it myself, at Honeywell. But when that movie, The Martian, came out, where the guy was stranded and the guy had to figure out the return orbit, back to pick him up to Mars, I'm like, that was one of my homework assignments. That was cool. I could relate. And I thought I quickly saw a question on the chat. They pop up and fade away. There at Glendale, we're an engineering outfit. And I'll tell you this one quick story. There was a sister outfit, Honeywell Torrance, and they were in jeopardy of missing a launch because they could not get their suppliers to produce bolts like metal bolts. And so the vice president picks up the phone and calls Glendale Space and says, I hear you guys are a bunch of hotshots. Can you make these bolts for Honeywell Torrance? And so here we are. We produce computers and RW reaction wheel assemblies, control moment gyroscopes, and we're being asked to produce bolts. But we're engineers. We turn ideas into solutions. We know how to figure things out. A Tiger team is formed, and within weeks, we turn over bolts to Honeywell Torrance. They tested them. We heard that it broke their test fixture, which was kind of funny, But yeah, engineers have that uncanny ability to problem solve. So just do what you feel is right to you. For me, it was the rule of cool. I picked aerospace engineering because it sounded cool during a high school presentation, and I stuck with it. Challenging as it was, and now I think it's cool when it shows up in the resume and LinkedIn. So that's probably my advice.
I want to chime in a little bit. I think that if you want to pursue an engineering career, figure out like very, very early on if you're willing to put the work in. Pretty much any engineering, scientific, STEM field, like I will tell you right now, in my third and fourth year in my master's, like every day after school, like my friend, like I had a really close-knit group with a few people, and we'd have to study and do homework every night until on average about 11 p.m. or midnight. So like if you want to be an engineer, you have to really like meditate on that and see if you enjoy problem solving. If you're not excited about solving problems, it might not be the right field for you. Like for example, this is an antenna. Okay. So I was dealing with a problem on this antenna and I couldn't figure it out at work. So I decided to cut this thing in half and take it home because I had to stare at it for a long time. The point I'm trying to make is that, as an engineer, your job doesn't stop at 5 p.m. Sometimes you might need to spend longer hours, figuring out a solution to a problem, because guess what? There's a customer that's paying millions or hundreds of millions of dollars for you to deliver a certain product. And if you're the one that's holding up a certain little piece of that product, well, guess what? That's not going to look good to the manager. And what are you going to tell them? Oh, sorry, I clocked out at 5. I put in my 40 for the week. So really meditate on if you like problem solving and if you're willing to put in the work. I would say those are two really important aspects of engineering and probably any STEM field.
Yep, really good points. I would say that always question like why you're doing things. You know, it could be a homework, it could be any project. You know, be prepared to explain why you're actually doing what you're doing because that's you know, that's what you kind of come across every day. You need to, you know, make sense and, you know, everything you learn at school, you know, those are tools and you need to kind of remember those tools, I would say, you know, back when you're, you know, in your job to kind of remember what you could use for this. Maybe you don't remember the whole thing, but, you know, remember the tool. And I would say be persistent and show your enthusiasm when, you know, looking for a job. And I guess be a good team player because, you know, nothing is done by yourself. So work on those interpersonal skills too, as you know, Samir said many times. So that's my advice.
I'll just add something real quick. I would recommend find a place and a problem that you're really interested in solving. So it only took me like 6 years to finally land on a position that I truly care. I'm currently working on a next generation diabetes sensor. So knowing that that's going to go into some kid's, you know, body and that's going to help him or her for many, many years and improve his or her life is beyond anything, because there will be some good days in the job, there will be some bad days, but at the end of the day, it's what you're doing, what's the purpose, you know, what problem are you working on, how important that is to you. So if you can find something really speaks to your heart, that's going to keep you growing and keep you improving. So I currently don't have any bad days, you know, and that's very hard to find.
Wow, thank you. I am so impressed by all of our panelists. I wish we could spend another hour just learning more about what you do and what you love about your job. But it is 7:02, so I just, on behalf of GCC, our engineering program and career services, thank you so much to all of our panelists for spending an hour with us in the evening. I know you all probably have families and work and dinner and all those things, but you're here with us, and I'm sure many of our students appreciate your time.